On December 5, 1872, the British brigantine Dei Gratia was navigating the Atlantic Ocean, approximately 400 miles east of the Azores. Its crew sighted another vessel, a two-masted brigantine, moving erratically under partial sail. Upon closing the distance, they identified the ship as the Mary Celeste. The ship was underway, yet there was nobody at the helm and no sign of life on deck. For 10 days, the Mary Celeste had been sailing the open ocean without a crew. Its cargo was secure, its provisions were ample, but the 10 souls who had been aboard were gone, and their fate remains one of the most persistent and unsettling mysteries in maritime history. The story of the Mary Celeste begins not with its disappearance, but with its construction and a series of seemingly unfortunate events. The ship was built in 1861 at Spencer's Island, Nova Scotia, and was originally christened Amazon. From its inception, the vessel appeared to be marked by misfortune. Its first captain, Robert McClellan, contracted pneumonia 9 days into its maiden voyage and died. On its subsequent journeys, it collided with another ship in the English Channel and later, in 1867, was driven ashore by a storm at Cape Breton Island. The wreck was sold, repaired, and in 1868, it was registered in New York under American ownership and given a new name, the Mary Celeste. In the autumn of 1872, the ship was under the command of Captain Benjamin Spooner Briggs. Briggs was a 37-year-old mariner from Marion, Massachusetts, born into a seafaring family. He was a respected and experienced captain, known to be a devout Christian and a teetotaler. By all accounts, he was a competent and fair-minded officer, not the sort of man to inspire mutiny or panic. For this voyage, Captain Briggs was accompanied by his wife, Sarah Elizabeth Briggs, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. Their 7-year-old son, Arthur, was left behind in Massachusetts to attend school with his grandmother. This arrangement, while poignant in retrospect, was not uncommon for the families of sea captains in that era. The crew selected by Briggs consisted of 7 men. The first mate was Albert G. Richardson, an American who was also a personal friend of the captain. The second mate was Andrew Gilling, another American. The remaining 4 sailors were German, the brothers Volkert and Boy Lorenzen, Arian Martens, and Gottlieb Gaudschall. The ship's cook was a Danish man named Edvard Head. These men were considered to be competent and peaceful sailors. There was no indication in their records or reputations of any predisposition toward violence or insubordination. The small company of 10 people, the Briggs family and their 7-man crew, was by all appearances a standard and professional complement for a merchant vessel of its size. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste departed from Pier 50 in New York City. Its destination was Genoa, Italy. Its cargo consisted of 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol intended for fortifying Italian wines. The value of the cargo was approximately $35,000. According to the ship's log, the first 2 weeks of the voyage were marked by heavy weather and rough seas as it crossed the Atlantic. The last entry on the ship's log slate was made at 8 o'clock on the morning of November 25th. It recorded the ship's position as being just off the Azores island of Santa Maria. After that entry, the official record of the Mary Celeste's journey, as documented by its own crew, ceases. 10 days later, the Dei Gratia made its discovery. Its captain, David Morehouse, was acquainted with Benjamin Briggs and knew that the Mary Celeste had departed New York 8 days ahead of his own vessel. Seeing the ship in such a state, so far from its last known position and sailing aimlessly, was deeply concerning. Morehouse hailed the ship for 2 hours, but received no reply. The silence was absolute. Finally, he dispatched his first mate, Oliver Devoe, and 2 other sailors to board the vessel and ascertain its condition. The boarding party found a ship that was unnervingly silent and empty. The sails were in a poor state, some torn and others missing entirely. The rigging was damaged, with ropes hanging loosely. On the main hatch, the cover was secure, but the fore and lazarette hatches were open. The ship's single lifeboat, a small yawl, was missing from its customary place. The binnacle, which housed the ship's compass, had been knocked from its position and its glass cover was broken. There were no obvious signs of a violent struggle. Below deck, the scene was one of contained disorder. In the captain's cabin, the crew from the Dei Gratia found the ship's papers, save for its register. Captain Briggs's navigational instruments, including his sextant and chronometer, were missing. Personal belongings were scattered, but still present. They found Sarah Briggs's sewing machine, with a small phial of oil standing upright beside it, and toys belonging to the child, Sophia. The crew's quarters were similarly undisturbed. The seamen's chests were in place, containing clothing and personal effects. Tobacco pipes, razors, and even a small amount of money were left behind. The galley was orderly. There was a 6-month supply of food and water on board, more than enough to sustain the crew for their journey and beyond. In the ship's hold, the cargo of 1,701 barrels of alcohol was found to be largely intact. A later inventory would reveal that 9 of the barrels were empty. These 9 barrels were made of red oak, a more porous wood than the white oak used for the others, which may account for leakage. The ship itself was seaworthy. While there was approximately 3.5 feet of water in the bilge, this was not considered an alarming amount for a vessel of its size and construction. However, one of the 2 bilge pumps had been disassembled, with its components laid out neatly on the deck. It was as if a crewman had begun a repair and then stopped, leaving the task incomplete. The final entry in the ship's logbook was dated November 25th, 10 days prior to its discovery. The last notation on the log slate indicated the ship had been 6 miles from the coast of the Azores island of Santa Maria. The crew of the Dei Gratia managed to sail the Mary Celeste nearly 800 miles to Gibraltar. They arrived on December 13th, where they sought to claim the salvage reward to which they were entitled by maritime law. The arrival of the ghost ship, however, immediately triggered a formal inquiry by the British Vice Admiralty Court. The Attorney General for Gibraltar, a man named Frederick Solly Flood, was in charge of the proceedings. He was immediately and deeply suspicious of the entire affair. Solly Flood was convinced that foul play was the only explanation for the state of the Mary Celeste. He could not accept that an experienced captain like Briggs would abandon a perfectly sound vessel on the high seas. His investigation was exhaustive and, in many respects, colored by his own preconceptions. He ordered the ship to be meticulously examined for any signs of violence. The surveyors reported several unusual findings that fueled his suspicions. They noted what appeared to be cuts on the ship's bows made by a sharp instrument. More ominously, a sword was discovered under Captain Briggs's bunk. When Solly Flood examined it, he reported that the blade appeared to be stained with a substance that looked like blood and that it seemed to have been wiped clean. A scientific analysis of the stains was inconclusive, but for Solly Flood, it was sufficient evidence. He also found marks on the ship's rail that he interpreted as bloodstains and signs of a struggle. His suspicion fell upon the crew of the Dei Gratia, whom he accused of having murdered everyone on the Mary Celeste to claim the salvage money. The court proceedings lasted for 3 months, but ultimately, no concrete evidence was found to support Solly Flood's accusations. The official inquiry concluded without a definitive answer, and from this vacuum of fact, numerous theories emerged. Solly Flood's own theory, which he maintained for the rest of his life, was one of mutiny and murder. He posited that the crew had broken into the cargo, consumed the industrial alcohol, and in a drunken rage, killed Captain Briggs, his family, and the ship's officers. They then damaged the ship's bows to simulate a collision and fled in the lifeboat. However, the denatured alcohol was not potable, and Captain Briggs's crew had a reputation for being sober and orderly. Furthermore, the lack of any significant signs of a struggle made a violent mutiny seem improbable. A more plausible explanation centers on the cargo itself. One theory posits that the 9 leaky barrels of alcohol released volatile fumes into the hold. Captain Briggs, fearing an imminent explosion, may have ordered a temporary evacuation. According to this scenario, he would have moved all personnel into the lifeboat, which would have been tethered to the ship by a long rope, allowing them to follow at a safe distance until the perceived danger had passed. A sudden storm or a snapped tow line could have separated the small, vulnerable lifeboat from the larger vessel, leaving its 10 occupants adrift in the vast Atlantic. This would account for the missing lifeboat and the disassembled pump, which Briggs might have been trying to repair to measure the amount of fumes or water in the hold. Another rational theory involves a combination of navigational error and mechanical failure. Modern analysis, using historical weather data, suggests that Captain Briggs's chronometer may have been faulty, placing him over 100 miles west of where he believed his ship to be. After weeks of bad weather and being unable to get an accurate position, the sudden, unexpected sight of land at Santa Maria may have been disorienting. Coupled with the clogged pumps, the ship had carried coal dust on a previous voyage, which could have fouled the mechanisms. Briggs may have mistakenly believed the ship was taking on water far faster than it was and was in danger of sinking. In this context, his decision to abandon ship within sight of land could be seen as a desperate but calculated risk to save his family and crew. More esoteric explanations have also been proposed over the years, their persistence fueled by popular fiction, most notably an 1884 short story by Arthur Conan Doyle that fictionalized the events. These theories suggest external forces. Some have speculated that the Mary Celeste was attacked by pirates, though the fact that the crew's valuables and the valuable cargo were left untouched makes this unlikely. Other, more fringe theories suggest an encounter with a sea monster, such as a giant squid, or even an abduction by extraterrestrial beings. These ideas, while compelling in fiction, lack any material evidence and remain in the realm of pure conjecture. The fate of the 10 people aboard the Mary Celeste has never been determined. No bodies were ever recovered. The lifeboat was never found. The ship itself sailed on under new owners, but its reputation as a cursed vessel followed it. It passed through the hands of 17 more owners over the next 13 years before its final captain deliberately wrecked it off the coast of Haiti in an attempt at insurance fraud. The ship that had survived its own mystery was finally destroyed. What remains is the central, unanswered question: what could compel a captain, his family, and his crew to abandon a perfectly seaworthy ship in the middle of the ocean, leaving behind all their possessions to face an unknown fate in a small open boat? The Mary Celeste continues its voyage, not upon the water, but through history, a silent testament to a profound and enduring mystery.